Alright, well, how strange is it that our favorite Marxist, Professor Richard Wolff, is blaming capitalism for the unequal amount of suffering from the downturn, and he does this based off of a quote from the Fed chairman Jerome Powell. Very strange indeed, as the very fact that we have a Fed chairman shows precisely what we don't have, which is a free market, unburdened with central planners that manipulate interest rates, and they try to hit their inflation targets, print ungodly amounts of money off, own I believe 60% of the mortgages in the US with that ability to just materialize money into existence, and they artificially prop up the stock market. So Richard Wolff is, I guess, unknowingly quoting the very person that is the chairman of the very institution that is completely antithetical to free market capitalism, and is the institution that has caused this inequality that Richard so fervently opposes. The rich love the Fed. The rich can't get enough of the bubbles it creates until it pops, and even then the rich get hurt. Or when we have a currency crisis, which again will hurt the rich substantially as well. So unbeknownst to them, they're just taking a drug more or less. They may feel good now, but it will turn around and bite them. The middle class and poor obviously shouldn't be such big fans either, as the printing of all this money disproportionately hurts them the most. So on one hand, Richard Wolff should be upset about where our inequality comes from and how much is caused by the rigged game that we've got. That is completely fair, and I agree. But it is peculiar how he blames capitalism, which is exactly what is not causing it. The aspects of capitalism and free markets that we still have left are not the cause of this inequality that he's upset about. It's government power, government-created institutions, government institutions themselves, government favors, and central power granted by government. And we need a population that understands that. And thankfully, that seems to be happening. It's a slow process, but more and more people are waking up to all of this. The politicians you elected are not your friends. If you do nothing else, kick them out. And it's also weird that Richard Wolff doesn't know this yet, because he was actually just on RT with Peter Schiff, and they were talking about the supposed recovery. Peter Schiff explained precisely that we don't have free markets. We have a Fed that controls everything from the top down. We have a fake, artificially created bubble economy, and we don't have an economy that moves along market forces. We only have a market that behaves in accordance to what the government-created decision makers have decided for all of us. That is not private people making private choices within their own private circumstances and having an interest rate ebbing and flowing naturally so we can better decide when to consume, when to invest, or when to save, instead of a Fed keeping them low for over a decade so savings are destroyed. We have a significant overconsumption problem. Way too much money piling into the stock market, which all of this just creates a ticking time bomb. This was all explained to Richard Wolff last week, and he frankly had no answer. He just says blaming the government is a cop-out, but then he also says that of course the government is to blame, but who owns the government? It's private interests. So what's Richard's solution to this? Have a top-down, democratically controlled economy, from the state to a small shop, all democratically operated. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure how you get control away from the small, medium, and even larger businesses without massive amounts of violence. That is the first concern. All the businesses out there that employ 20 or 30 people, what if the business owner doesn't want to give up all that control? What if the people currently working for them were not hired for decision making? Perhaps it's people sweeping up and operating a cash register. A democratically run workplace would not be a great idea, but as Marxists have done and are currently doing right now and are currently advocating for more of, which is of course burning it all down. Or as the ex-CEO of Twitter just said, at least, the me-first capitalists who think you can separate society from business are going to be the first people lined up against the wall and shot in the revolution. So if I own a smaller business that might even be doing well, and I employ 20 or so people, if I don't want to give democratic control of the business to all employees, they're going to ask nicely and walk away if I refuse? No, of course not. If Richard Wolff and the former CEO of Twitter and other Marxists we've been seeing have their way, it's up against the wall with you. It's not like we haven't seen this innumerable times throughout the past century. Now, I don't think most people would go along with that anyway, which is a good thing, but what is the solution to this? Because it is fair for Richard Wolff to point out that the government is controlled by big business interests. They're not private businesses, by the way, because once you start getting in the bed with government, you become de facto a part of the government, but regardless, there is a lot of that. So what do we do? Well, I can say for one thing, over the past 8 or 9 years, it has been great to watch more and more people becoming aware of all this. Now, I'm not saying this just because Ron Paul was just in the news, but that guy made that a national conversation for the first time in my life. People becoming aware of the Fed and the negative effects it has on our lives. The anarcho-capitalists, the libertarian movements, they've been doing nothing but growing. Maybe not the party, but the movement and the ideology itself has been growing at a record pace. The more and more people realize this and understand how much of a problem it is, the more chance we have at ridding ourselves of it. After all, we've done it twice in U.S. history before. We've gotten rid of 2 central banks in the past. There's no reason it can't happen again. But one thing I know is that lining people in business up and executing them or appropriating everyone's property against their will, from the big businesses down to the smaller businesses, that would be like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It won't work, and in fact it would make everything infinitely worse. Government is the root cause of our problems, and Richard Wolff is completely incorrect to say that it's a cop-out to point this out. You solve the issue of government and the favors they dole out and the regulations they impose, which hurt smaller businesses and help bigger businesses and direct barriers to entry into the marketplace. You erase that and you will see massive improvements for everyone. But anyway, that's all for right now. Like and subscribe and take it easy.